Welcome to the Star Wars Reporter podcast, the official podcast of StarWarsReporter.com. I am one of your hosts tonight. I am the very ugly Wookiee Steve, and I'm joined by. Oh, come on! I know you're just being too kind to me.
handsome Wookiee.
Well, tell that to my wife. So we are a little late tonight with the crew. Some are busy. Some might be joining us late. But in the meantime, let us introduce you to my other co-host, Jason.
Hey, man, how's everybody doing? Hey, and tonight, because it's such a special movie, I am this guy.
Oh, you're wearing the T-shirt.
I am wearing the T-shirt of the movie we're podcasting. They'd say, "Don't be that guy," but I am that guy. I am that geek. And we need that geek. I am that geek tonight. So.
You aren't the geek that people want. You're the geek that people need.
I'm the geek that you need. Yes.
And I am apparently on. I showed up to the wrong podcast because I'm wearing something else. But it's again too. I think we've said this before. I need to buy more Star Wars T-shirts. Maybe we talk about this offline. I'm like, I don't have any Star Wars T-shirts. I don't know where to go. Like, I'm going to all these like T-shirt places like Redbubble and all those kinds of stuff. And plus I need like
social media, man.
Social, yeah.
I'm just going through something and they get you. They get me all the time. Like they'll post, some T-shirt company has all these shirts. I'm like, no, I can't. And then I click on it. I'm like, this came from just a random click. I'm like, oh my God. All right.
I know I need to do that. I'm kind of going through all my Viking phase shirts right now. I do have one T-shirt that actually still fits. And it's like that Luke Skywalker one that I got in Toronto at the Fan Expo. Like Jason was saying, tonight it is episode 51 for us, but it's episode 5 for the Star Wars franchise, which is The Empire Strikes Back. And, this is, again, first of all, one of the best movie posters ever made is this one.
Yeah, it's such a great image.
Beautiful. But I mean, this was coming on the heels of the explosion of the whole Star Wars scene, right? Star Wars A New Hope was a hit and you couldn't get enough Star Wars, right? So then the follow-up movie is this amazing movie, which for most fans would be probably their favorite, or at least in the top 2 for sure.
Yeah, it's definitely kind of widely considered the best, and with good reason. It's oh my God. Well, even to start out for me, I just want to say in the beginning, now we're old guys, so we were around when this stuff was in the theater. And I had seen it, of course, that summer. And then, but the showing that really, really, I'll never ever forget. Now, 1980, the winter of 1980, later that year, the Winter Olympics was being held in Lake Placid, New York. My family went on a vacation. I'm from New York. I grew up in Long Island, New York. We went on vacation to Lake Placid. I think it was either right before or right after. I want to say it was probably right after because it wasn't like a total mob scene. And Lake Placid itself was all done up with the Olympic stuff, and it was just amazing. There's flags everywhere, and just paraphernalia from the Olympics. And we're in downtown, and there's this little movie theater. And oh my God, this little theater was just decked with Star Wars. They had cardboard cutouts, they had posters. It was almost like a modern day. It was just crazy. And I'm like Star Wars Empire Strikes Back. So we watched The Empire Strikes Back in Lake Placid, right around the time of the Winter Olympics. And I'll never forget that. And that viewing fit because I was in a wintry wonderland. It was later in the year, one of the re-releases.
Right.
But what that makes me think is one of the first things that stands out to me about The Empire Strikes Back was the contrast to A New Hope. And also the fact that normally, during, most people, you see it during the summer. And here is this movie that plunged you into this total winter landscape. And it was just Hoth literally it was just snow. And it was just so different, like right away. There was familiar, you had Luke and Leia and you had everybody, but the landscape, the scenery, it was so striking and kind of unexpected, like just different, at the time. So that was like right away. It was like they dared right out of the gate, that the Empire Strikes Back dared to say, we're going to give you these great characters and all this stuff, but this one's going to be different.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. And that is basically in the opening scene as well, right? So when Empire Strikes Back takes place, it's 3 years after the destruction of the Death Star, right? So now they're out there, they have more experience. Luke is out there. So open up with droids being sent out because they're looking for the rebels. And in that time, let's start with what you were just talking about, Hoth. So this is, around not this scene here, but this was, to me as a kid, this was terrifying of what was happening. But let's start off. The movie starts off on Hoth, right? The rebels are hiding out on this snow planet. So, and again, it was Lucas giving us kind of, the first movie was this big sand planet. Second movie, we start off on the big snow planet. So, yeah, you were right. I mean, it just, well, okay, first of all, Todd, who's not here, Todd and I grew up in very far north mining town in Canada, where I was just telling you before we went live, there was snow from October. Most of the time during Halloween, we were wearing the big snow coats and bundled up. You couldn't see our costume. It was really dumb. So like lots of snow from like October to April. It was just brutal. So Hoth was like being at home for us, minus the I forget those beasts, the wampas. So we did have bears though. So
well, there you go. It's close enough. And it was interesting too, like, the Empire Strikes Back was such a perilous one. It was like, everything goes wrong, and and right out of the gate, like that feeling of that Imperial probe droid was so creepy and insect-like, and just right away, gave that little impression that, because it was like, okay, the Death Star blew up. As a little kid, I'm like, well, we won. Like, what's left? And it was like, ooh, wow, like you had such a remote feeling on Hoth, the ice planet, but then that Imperial probe droid shows up, and all the rebels' reaction, Leia and Han, when they realize, like, an Imperial probe droid, we've been found. And I was like, oh, okay, this is serious, like right out of the gate. They're trying to hide from the Empire, and they found them with this creepy insectoid-like droid.
I always found that part really weird, right? So the rebels are hiding. So they're on this planet, and the probe droid seats their power generator that's just way out in the open. Like they couldn't have like covered it with snow or some kind of structure to make it look like snow. They just left that out in the open. So when the probe droid sends his picture back, right, and Vader sees it, he's like, "Yep, that's them. Let's just go and check this out." I was just watching this just recently. It's amazing what you pick up on every single time you watch it. So after like the 100th time, I'm like, why didn't they have that hidden? You know what I mean? It's like it's like their base. It'd be like them building their base up on top of the surface for everyone to see instead of underground for no one to see. They had this generator that wasn't solar, so why didn't he? But it was part of the story.
Well, it was like huge. I had the impression that they did what they could. Like the whole thing is makeshift. They probably went through hell just getting the hangar, that big, which was, there's some beautiful shots, the hangar, like X-Wings flying and everything. But they had to put out that hangar, and they had all their stuff. They had their ships around. They probably just too much stuff and too many ships to hide everything. They were relying more on the remoteness of the planet.
For sure. I mean, and if you look at all the hallways and stuff, it looked really rough. Like they just kind of had some kind of digger that went through, and they were like putting the wires up in the snow, and so I find that really interesting. And as a kid, the whole Wampa scene that gets Luke in the beginning, very beginning of the movie, they do not waste time, right? Wampa surprises Luke and his poor Tauntaun, and wow. I remember watching that with my kids the first time, and it was awesome seeing their reaction, because all these certain parts I think they're going to react. I'm always just staring, right? Like Anakin was killing the younglings. I was like looking at my daughter when it was, he pops that lightsaber on and she's all lazy, and then she's like this, and it's the same thing with the Wampa. It's like, oh, and I laugh, and then they get mad.
Right. Yeah, no, and that scene too, like, it's really beautifully crafted because it does a lot of things actually, very simply and right in the beginning. And one, it's that the universe is perilous. It's that Luke Skywalker is, hey, you blew up the Death Star, and that's amazing, but now the battle continues, and you're prone not just to the Empire, but you're prone to the elements, and all the critters.
Yeah. And isn't this also not the first time that we see him use the Force for the first time?
Well, exactly, and that's what I was leading to, and that was the biggie, was that he used Force telekinesis. He actually got his saber, and that was beautifully done. It was tense. The Wampa's coming for him, that great soundtrack, and he's concentrating. He closes his eyes, and we see him well, I mean, you could say when he blew up the Death Star, he used the Force, but this was the first time we saw him just kind of on his own, and use like a power, like a real visible power of it. So that was huge. So we saw a little, and it wasn't too much. So it was perfect. It was like the next movie, and Luke's, he's taking a step up. This is the next year of class. He's got a little bit of power, and we saw him use it, and it was perfect because it wasn't too much. He didn't lift a mountain or anything. He struggled, and he got his saber and freed himself. So we saw that there's peril in the universe. He's in a tough situation already in the very beginning of this movie. He's already got beat to hell. And he's starting to use that mystical Force. So I love that scene.
Yeah. Mark Hamill was host of this web series called Pop Culture Quest. And there was an episode, actually I think I was sent by one of the producers, one of the outtakes or one of the scenes where Mark Hamill talks about that whole scene with the Wampa. And maybe this is out there already, but he explained when they were going to film that, he told, he didn't feel that Luke as a Jedi would kill this creature. And so, because he's a big animal advocate even back then. And so the director's like, no, it's all fine. Just, wave your lightsaber and it's just going to scare him away. It's all good. So he didn't realize until the film came out that he actually, cut the Wampa's arm off. It definitely died, right? There's no, and so it still bothers him. And I remember making this meme with the Wampa.
It could have survived
with the arm. It looks like a little sewn. It's like the action figures that I made. It was like it was a meme. I think it was one of those I think it made it for Christmas. Some kind of Christmas dumb meme and stuff like that. But so he actually thought he was just scaring the beast away.
That's interesting. I didn't know.
Yeah, and then this is before maybe George Lucas was figuring out like force push and stuff like that. Like Luke could have definitely, he was still new in it, kind of used a big force push on him or something. But and then some people have criticized, like, why didn't Luke stay in the cave? He already killed the Wampa instead of going out into the storm. But apparently, from what I had read in the past, I could be wrong, there was lots of them. So he just wanted to get out of there.
Yeah, that was a famous. I don't know if they actually filmed anything for it, but one of the scenes that was supposed to be in The Empire Strikes Back was and it was like while the Empire was even attacking, they were overrun with Wampas.
Yeah.
And like one of the closed doors in the hallways in the Rebel base even was had Wampas in it or whatever. That was like a whole side story.
Yeah. Did you see the outtake had where they trapped a bunch of them in this one room and they put like the sticker over it or something to say, don't go in. And then when the Empire was busting in, C-3PO rips the sticker off the door. and then they have this scene where the door opens, the stormtroopers open the door, and the Womp arm comes out and grabs them. I'm glad they cut it because it's funny as a deleted scene, but it looked very campy.
It's funny.
It looked very campy. So yeah, so it was really interesting. And then there was the whole rumor about the fact that they did that because Mark Hamill had gotten into a car accident the summer before and kind of messed his face up. So they kind of wrote the scarring into the script, which I'm pretty sure that everyone denies that that's true. And I guess it doesn't really matter. So
he does. You know, it's funny though. Some people, you age, even, when you're younger, you change. People can like change, but he does look different. Like his nose is like kind of different.
Yeah.
He does look different than the first movie. It's kind of striking actually. So I always had heard that too. And I believe something happened because just, again, like his nose is different. I'm like, I wonder if his nose got broken because it's like a little flatter, a little bit wider. He does look different. And he's still a very young guy. Like, you do change. He wouldn't have changed that much. Like, he was, what was he, 24? I think in the first one he was 24.
I believe so.
And then would have been 27 for Empire. So,
right.
But, yeah, no, it's very interesting.
Yeah, it is.
But,
so,
and then they, the great battle, they put the huge battle of this movie in the beginning, which was, an interesting, different thing to do.
Yeah, so this whole thing
battle in the beginning.
Yeah, which was awesome, and the snow speeders and the whole, I don't know how much they would do nowadays with it, but it was so creative, right? When you go out there, like the speeders weren't strong enough, their blasters weren't strong enough to penetrate the AT-ATs. So they were like, well, let's use these cables and we'll trip them up. And, it's very 80s creative and I absolutely love it. Right. So.
And they put you in that first person perspective so much in that battle. They actually do that for a lot of Hoth. Like even when they're searching for Han and everything, they put you in the cockpit of the speeders.
Ooh.
I loved that. Yeah. I mean, and today, of course, that may not be as striking, with all the movies, everything, but Star Wars, that's another thing where Star Wars, that was so cool. That was such a cool angle. And all through the Hoth battle, half of it, you were that first person perspective, like in the ship. And it was just so cool.
Yeah.
Considering they did it with, practical effects, it's amazing.
Well, it's one of those things, right? Lucas loves speed. He likes racing, like car racing. So there's that, trench run. Then you have like kind of the perspective of the speeders. And then the next movie we'll talk about next time. But it seemed kind of a futile effort when the AT-ATs are coming. And I always wondered, you've seen the rebel soldiers running out. After they took down one of the AT-ATs and they go running out. Like, what are they going to do? Like, I never understood because the Empire didn't have any ground troops running down the snow. So I'm not sure what they were expecting to do, but it just,
there's one particular scene with that I've always caught there's one poor rebel trooper when General Veers gets up to the generator.
Right.
And he's like, maximum firepower. And right before they take out the generator with a big explosion and everything, there's one rebel trooper that AT-AT fires. They shoot one guy right before, and then they shoot over the troopers. But I always felt bad. I'm like, that poor one dude got taken out by like maximum power from the AT-AT. Like,
wow.
But it also typified the detail in The Empire Strikes Back. The Empire Strikes Back, just from an artist standpoint, it's so beautifully done. It's artistry. Right. And you could see that detail. And again, modern day movies, you've got 1,000 more things going on. And you could say, well, there's a ton of detail in every frame of everything. But again, for the time and just the poetry of it, with what they had, Empire Strikes Back is just beautifully done. And there's a whole bunch of those little nuggets, those little details. Like even when the AT-AT kind of, one of them, it steps to the side and its head turns and it takes out one of the snow speeders, and the speeder just, and then, slams into the ground. And there was just all these little details that they added throughout the entire movie.
It's interesting if you watch the making of Star Wars, it was like the making of The Empire Strikes Back. I think Disney Plus has it on there. I remember originally watching it on TV after The Empire Strikes Back came out, and they kind of modeled it's no shock. They modeled the AT-ATs after they kind of used the movements of elephants and stuff like that. So, when the AT-AT moves sideways to take out that one speeder or whatever, it's just really interesting, right? And the whole Walker thing, again, a different universe, a different galaxy, and the cosmetics they're using, instead of wheels or like snow machines, it's like these big AT-ATs. But again, too, right in the beginning of the movie, it's futile again for these rebels, right? It doesn't matter, it doesn't matter if Luke is throwing, grenades inside of an AT-AT. They're just done, right? So, and then we also get to see kind of this, as a kid, I'm not understanding this. You're seeing this kind of what's going on between Han and Leia. That whole scene where they're arguing in the hall, and he's like, come on, give me a kiss. That's what you want to do. And she says, I'd rather kiss a Wookiee or something. And he yells that, I can arrange that. So funny. It's like perfect humor in the movie, right? Without being campy, and and maybe has a lot to do with Harrison Ford too, right? But
it's perfect too, because they established in A New Hope, those two constantly bickering, but there's that tension, but it's real. It's like, that's how, sometimes even, friends, or even somebody you end up caring about, in a relationship, you started out like just at odds, completely, and just circumstance and personality. And, obviously in this movie, well, later on, everything that happens, but it's just beautifully done. It was like, a lesser director, they could have just been in love. No, they were like, it was inevitably happened after a movie and a half of them just constantly at each other until it just boils over, which, again, it's simple, but it's more believable. It's more relatable, especially with their characters. So again, The Empire Strikes Back, it amazes me. It's such a fluid, simple course of plot with the movie, like compared to even newer Star Wars, everything's all over the place. It's so simple, but at the same time, so much happens. There's so much like depth to it. But it's a very straightforward storyline, and you're not jumping blah 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 blah, blah all over the place. But the characters have time to evolve.
Yeah, that's what I love about that. So for those of you that are watching live right now, join in the chat. You can maybe tell your favorite part of The Empire Strikes Back, or maybe your least favorite part, or what the film means to you. So Jason and I right now are going through it. So let us know. You could also see the social media at the bottom. You can follow us on. But join us in the chat, and we'll answer you, talk to you. We might let Jason. I'm not really sure, but So moving along, you got the big battle. Obviously, the rebels lose miserably. Han and Leia and Chewbacca and C-3PO get away on the Falcon. Luke makes his way back and is going to go to the rendezvous point, but instead he makes a detour, right? Mm-hmm. So now we have the split, which is really cool, right? The two or more different stories. So then one of my favorite is the part where you see Luke going to Dagobah to become. I love this scene right here. It's just so interesting. And again, I keep saying as a kid because we were young at one point in our life.
Yes.
Luke gets to Dagobah to train to be a Jedi, where Han and Leia are trying to escape several Star Destroyers, which in that point, I have to say, that was the first time we get to see what the Millennium Falcon can do. Because in the first movie, they're running, like they're escaping from the Death Star. It's just flying straight, and Han and Luke are like blasting them away. There's one part where they're trying to get away, and the light speed doesn't work, which is so funny, right? It's a hunk of junk. When he takes that first move, he's like, well, I can maneuver, and he just drops straight and just.
I love that.
It's so amazing.
We can outmaneuver them.
Exactly. It's just how amazing that they made that
almost
look.
Collide.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a really striking image, and just watching it recently again, I was thinking the same thing. I always have loved that. He just dives down. The TIE fighters go wailing after him, and then the Star Destroyers almost collide, and you get those big warning sirens going off, and the Star Destroyers like big ships almost colliding. But yeah, very striking, and exactly like we see the Falcon really in action, and we learn why, okay, Han Solo, this dude is a good pilot. Because all of that and the chase through the asteroids, which is so cool and so amazingly well done. And he's just weaving in and out of everything. You've got great banter going because you've got C-3PO with everything. You got Leia, what are you doing? And, you're not actually going into an asteroid field. That'd be crazy to follow us. You just... again, you get The Empire Strikes Back. It's aware of everything. It's aware of the character relationships. Even in the middle of an action chase scene like that, you've got great character banter. And there's just not a second wasted. It's just wonderful. So, again, in one scene, you're getting Han, great pilot, Millennium Falcon's capabilities. You're getting Han and Leia jabbing at each other. You're getting 3PO being annoying C-3PO. You get it all in that one scene. It's fantastic.
It's a really good balance because the scenes where we see, Han and the gang trying to escape the Empire is very fun and like you said, all the banter. And because then when we go to the scenes with Luke, it's very serious, right? It's like it's on Dagobah, this really depressing planet. Then we finally get to meet Yoda, and we'll get to that, but it's very different, right? When you get to those scenes, he's training, right? So there's this whole balance. We start learning more about what the Force is, the dark side, the light side, and again, it's when we first get to see Yoda, and maybe it's nostalgia eyes talking, but man, you have this puppet, and it's just like one of the actors, man.
Yeah,
I don't see it as a puppet.
No, to this day, I know, and I was thinking that too. Again, I'm like, they made absolute magic with him. And Lucas always said, and a lot of people are familiar with this, like the whole movie was on Yoda's shoulders in the sense that if the audience doesn't buy this, then this is going to be a disaster. And good Lord, did they just nail it? I mean, every line of dialogue from Yoda, from the time Luke meets him, in the very beginning, his expressions, and
Frank Oz,
one of the early, my God, one of the early times when Luke was, I'm looking for a great warrior, and of course not make one great. And like Yoda had that disappointed look at Luke, like in the beginning. And I'm like, man, how he emoted. It was just so beautifully done. Actually, one of the funny stories about that too, and some people may have heard of this, as far as Frank Oz was talking about. Now, Frank Oz was underneath the stage, like underneath the his hut and all that stuff, operating him. And he said that Ern Kirshner would like be directing, and he was talking to Yoda. He was like, on the next one, could we? And Frank Oz is like, Irv, he's like, Kirsch, I can't hear you. He's like, you got to talk to me, because he was talking to the puppet, because the puppet was so convincing. It was like, he was like a real guy on set. This is hysterical. Oh, and there's the Yoda in my home making an appearance. The kitty cat.
I noticed that. That's funny.
That's
Yeah,
funny.
you know what? I love how they chose to go with Luke's first meeting with Yoda, because basically Yoda comes in and does the whole Columbo act. See, I just aged myself. Columbo was this detective show back in the day,
In the
and
1940s. No.
yeah, it was like 70s or 80s, right? And he would act really dumb, but he wasn't dumb. It was just to throw people off. And he'd always do that, ask questions. Oh, okay, thanks. And he'd leave, and he'd always do that one more question, right, to kind of throw them off. But that's what Yoda was doing. He was acting like this goofy guy, and I think he was really kind of sensing out Luke's character, right? The type of person he was.
Oh yeah.
And to me, that's what it was.
Brilliant. Yeah, no, exactly. It was testing, come out like, oh, I'm the Jedi you're looking for, which would have been 100 times lamer. Right. No, he's, he wanted to see, how's this kid going to respond? I'm just some little creature. I'm this nut. How's he going to treat? It's like you go to the fancy restaurant and a test of character is, how do you treat the waiter?
Yeah.
How do you treat the guy behind the counter, at the convenience store or whatever? Yoda didn't come at him as, I am the Jedi Master. Oh, he probably wouldn't have believed it first anyway. Right. He's like, I'm going to come at him as this little nothing creature of the swamp, this little 1 foot tall, whatever. How's he going to treat me? Because it told Yoda. And I don't think Luke didn't treat him horribly, but no. Luke did treat him a little dismissively because he was so anxious. And that told Yoda a lot. And eventually it told Yoda that, when he kind of reveals himself, that this kid's got no, I cannot teach him. The boy has no patience, which that was the big lesson that he had. He didn't have patience, so yeah, beautiful. Again, just beautiful scene. Yeah. And developing Yoda right out of the gate, and just the character development for Luke Skywalker through The Empire Strikes Back is just, it's so well done. It's so good.
Even during the meeting where Yoda's doing his Columbo goofy act, there is the one point where, Luke says, I'm looking for I'm looking for a great warrior. And Yoda makes a comment like, oh, great warrior. Or did he say it then where he's like, wars do not make one great.
Wars not make one great.
Yeah. And I thought it's so cool, again, a kid, right? So in this epic sci-fi story that I love so much, it was like this, there was my Zen master, discovered him through Yoda, who, I'm pretty sure I either forgot, how old would I have been then? Forgot that he was a puppet, or was like, wow, this is all real.
No, it totally, and another thing that needs to be said, of course, God, these movies, we could talk all day. It's funny about all this stuff. But it just has to be said, too, that, once again, as we had Hoth, this striking setting, what an amazing setting to just pull you in and lose yourself. That swamp, all of it, from where the X-Wing, as you pointed out, the X-Wing landed in the water and the tree roots, and it's all dark, and just the sounds of the forest and the swampland. What an absolutely perfect, wonderful setting. So remote from everything, to just drag you more into the spiritual and emotional side of the story that it's trying to show you. The setting is so good. Again, it's so wonderful, and it's just magical. And it made me think of even the fantasy movies of the time, like the Dark Crystal and stuff like that. It's a setting that could have been in like a Krull or something like that. Dagobah could have been in a fantasy movie. Where the trolls live, or something. And so, which to me added to the mysticism of it, which was,
I again, pointing out the contrast between the adventure that Leia and Han were going on and what Luke was doing on his journey. Whenever they would go to Dagobah, to the scene where Luke was, I mean, it kind of gave me, at least, that same kind of like, it kind of brought my mood down to where I'm sure Luke felt, right? It seemed really like there was stress, and there was like kind of a hurried purpose, and everything seemed closed in, and I like that feeling, because that's what it was this kind of like, this planet had the purpose, Luke's training had a purpose. So and again too, anyone in the chat that's watching us now, let us know what you think. Talk about, we're actually on the point, we're talking about Luke on Dagobah, but it was that whole mood that it generated made the audiences feel, right? You could almost feel the stress and the tension that probably Luke was going through trying to train.
And the beautiful thing with it all, and again, we could have an entire podcast on just that scene, but overall, again, it was so perfect, the dynamic of Luke Skywalker through the entire trilogy, really. New Hope, the bright-eyed kid and everything. He's got some ability, and he blows up the Death Star, And then The Empire Strikes Back. He's anxious to get going. He's, of course, he wants to get to the Jedi Master quick. He wants to get out there. I'm going to go out and save my friends and everything. Right. And that when he's getting ready to leave after the cave, Yoda tells him, "Your weapons, you will not need them." But of course, well, all right, buddy, I'm bringing them anyway. Which is this great metaphor for, he's bringing his weapons with him, and he's bringing some of his dark, the dark side and anxiousness and all that. And then this pseudo confrontation with Vader, that, and again, people have different interpretations, of some of that, but, shows, ultimately himself and what you could become if you continue down this path. Your anxiousness and all this, you're kind of flirting with the dark side by you got stuff to learn here, kid. And then he's anxious to go off and to leave, and that's another great scene. It's Obi-Wan and Yoda saying, "Look, you can feel the Force, but you can't control it. It's a dangerous time for you. Like you're right in the middle of learning. You're not really ready for this, and you could jeopardize not necessarily yourself that you're going to jeopardize. You could jeopardize this whole thing,
right?
You can't just sacrifice yourself. You're going to screw the whole thing up if you get yourself killed, basically."
Right. It was a lot of little, probably, cliche or not, but all the lessons from Yoda, like when he's when the X-Wing finally goes under the water in the swamp, and Yoda's like, "Go lift it out," and stuff, and he gives it a try, and he, because Luke was thinking that the Force was so physical, right? And then he's saying, Yoda's saying things like,
"It's too big
by my size." Yeah,
where you should not.
Yeah. It was a very cool scene when Yoda pulls that X-Wing out of the swamp.
That's one of my favorite scenes. That's sort of, it's so hard to say my favorite scene of the whole thing, all of Star Wars. That scene with that music, and there's this little tiny dude in this secluded planet, all alone, nowhere, doing this extraordinary, miraculous thing, showing our young hero, no, it's not impossible. And look what look what can actually happen. And the X-Wing comes up. It's so beautiful. And just like Yoda lifting the X-Wing out of the swamp, we get Todd lifted into the podcast.
Trooper Todd made it.
Hey,
Todd,
guys.
Good to see you, man.
Well, catching you up. We made it from Hoth to Dagobah, and
you're still on Dagobah?
We're still on Dagobah.
Yeah, we're just discussing just the beauty of. We were just talking about the meeting of Yoda, and then how Luke's the beautiful character development as Luke is impatient for everything, but he's learning from Yoda, and now he's gonna run off, and they're like, "No, Luke, you're not ready to leave yet." And then a little bit before that, we were just talking about how Yoda's, I can't lift the X-Wing, it's too big. You want the impossible, and then that beautiful scene where Yoda lifts the X-Wing out of the swamp,
and the music, and everything about that scene, right?
Yes, and it's even one of the most poignant moments in Star Wars.
And Frank Oz, you give credit to Jim Henson. Frank Oz brought that puppet alive. Like, there's not one point in that movie you're going, that's a puppet. Like
That's a
you
puppet.
totally,
I know.
you totally buy
we just said the exact
sorry,
thing.
sorry, guys. But just the whole thing.
No, it's great though. It's
like
yes.
just his eyes are closed and you feel it, right? The music allows you to feel it. It's just like it's so well done, and just the whole. I'm sure you said, like, I can't believe it. I can't believe it. No, that's why you fail.
That is why you fail, right? And then so many quotes from Yoda. It's just beautifully done, And overall, too, up to this point, Todd, like we were just saying, how The Empire Strikes Back, like. It's in a way like all the original trilogy. It's very simple. Like the plots are. The story is at once very simple, but at the same time, so much that is key to everything. The characters all develop. The plot moves forward. Han and Leia are bickering, but they're ultimately gonna fall in love. Luke Skywalker goes, it's a straight path with his story, but it's so beautifully done. The characters breathe and develop and grow while the stuff is going on around them.
And that's a really good point, which I noticed too. I'm watching the movie, going, like, really, this storyline is probably one of the most basic storylines of all the Star Wars movies. It's almost like a straight line, and it's everything that goes on in that straight line, and and how well it's crafted, and how beautiful everything looks. Like, I know you guys talked about Hoth, like how amazing is that Hoth scene, to Dagobah, to the whole entire. Like, you got to think that Han, Chewie, Leia, 3PO spent so much time in that ship, just going from Hoth to Bespin. It's just how well it's all put together, and so, like I said, a straight line. Nothing's really happening, but so much is happening.
Right, exactly, and just what you said, like, and we were talking about this before. Like you get the asteroid chase, which was wild. We got to see the Millennium Falcon maneuver. We get to see Han Solo as a pilot, and the characters are still. You get Han and Leia bickering, developing. You get 3PO being 3PO and annoying to Han, and so even though you get this action scene, you're getting character development. You're getting the melding and the relationships happening. So it's not just a point A to point B. You're getting all this stuff going on. That this heavy stuff for the character development.
Yeah.
Whereas some of the newer movies, you could say they're going to A and to B and to C and to D and to E, but you're not learning the characters aren't breathing and growing together.
Well, welcome to those. Sorry, I just want to welcome the people in chat. Andre, who's saying #release the Lucas sequel trilogy. I couldn't agree with you more. Well,
it worked for Zack Snyder. I'm sure HBO Max is doing really, really well. I took the 4 hours to watch it yesterday myself, and time well spent. Time well spent. So like, I hear there's a lot of buzz about Lucas releasing his trilogy. I hear that Jon Favreau is asking for more creative control over his Mandalorian, and so like, maybe this is a shift, right? Like, you just look what happened. Fans demanded to see the Snyder Cut. The fact that they invested $70 million to release it, like, it's mind-boggling. Wow. So maybe this is the turning the tide. Maybe fans have a right to speak up. Maybe another thing is just the overall reception of, I know it's not Star Wars, but the overall reception of this film done the director's vision with no studio interference. It's huge, right? And there's the first one's trash. This one, it's good. It's good. Is it as good as a Marvel movie? Is it as good as a really good Star Wars movie? No, but it's good. It's a good DC movie, which is very rare to say. Unless Christopher Nolan directed it, right? But just release it. Let George Lucas do it.
The George Lucas cut.
It can't be worse, right? It can't be worse, really. Let him go. Let him go.
So let's talk about because we were talking a lot about Luke and his journey. I was saying, Todd, too, before you came on, that there's a big contrast, right? Luke Han and Leia's kind of like this really, space action-packed, funny, the banter, and then it's contrasted with kind of Luke's training, and it becomes very, serious and dark and somber at times, right? You have his journey and struggle. So, but let's kind of get into kind of like, the as Jason has used several times, the genius of the the dialogue, the fun, not forced, and it has probably a lot to do with Harrison Ford's ability to really be funny. But it was really, really awesome with that.
I agree 100% too. Like, and quite frankly, I like to dog on C-3PO, but I mentioned last week on New Hope is C-3PO and R2 is good, but really, how good was C-3PO in this tying everything together too, right? Where you talk about it really gave the comic relief, timed perfectly. The personality of the character came out really, really well, and just tied everything together. That third wheel sort of thing, right? Where you have Leia and Han's relationship building, and like you're saying, very little dialogue, but it just how fast that relationship built, right? Like, because when we get to Bespin, like, you buy in to their turmoil, and it's just like, it just shows that there's so many feelings that were deep down not being expressed because I'm the princess and I'm the scoundrel, and they didn't really ever express. You can feel that tension all the way through the movie, right? It's set up really, really well for that big, huge. The big line, right? The big line. It was just really well pulled together.
But what did you guys think too? Like, maybe I was a dumb kid, but that whole, Han and Leia on the Falcon when they're repairing it and they have that big kiss and everything. Like, I like nice men. No, you like scoundrels or blah, blah, blah and stuff. And I was like, oh, nice. Girls and boys kissing.
I don't remember being a problem. I don't remember being a problem as a kid. Like, when I watched it, that didn't really throw me off. Like, you just kind of accept everything as a kid. Finally, I think, you don't really. We were 7, Steve, when it came out, right? I'm guessing.
Yeah.
So you just kind of buy into it. Like, the one thing I really missed the first time watching was when Luke's flying off and Yoda says, I know we're going back to Yoda, but he says, "No, there is another." Right? Like, I didn't really grasp that when I first saw it as a kid.
Same.
Right? And then you get older, you watch the second time, going, "Oh, what? They're really setting something up," which is kind of a nice little plug that shows that George Lucas, where the new sequel trilogy didn't really have anything tied together. Where there's a game plan and it's followed all the way through and executed well. But you're right, like that. See, the whole Millennium Falcon relationship building between Han and Leia was very, very well crafted, very, very well put together.
Even to the kiss, like Han Solo was still just being Han Solo all the way into it. He's like, "No, I'm nice, man," and all that. Like, it was like they were still totally them all the way into it. It's like Han still being a sarcastic, being scoundrel. He's being what he says, like all the way into it. And then perfect C-3PO, as you said before, the perfect third wheel comes in. And so it was like, even that kiss was like, that's their characters. It's perfect. And it just developed Han and Leia. They took a little step. You're like, oh, okay. So now you saw her give a little. So again, like almost very simply, a lot's done. And that's what the Empire Strike managed. Like, like we were saying, like Todd, you say, like the movie, it's very simple. It's the plot. You're not going from here all over the place. It's very simple, but at the same time, all these little moments are huge. They equate to the character development and the story development.
Yeah, the character development
where the newer Star Wars missed it. The
character development between Han and Leia, just thinking about this now, it really began on Hoth, right? And it was subtle. The audience didn't have to be hit over the head with the giant bat to realize something was going on. When we first see them together, Han comes in.
Well, why are you following me?
Out on the Tauntaun, and just the look they kind of give each other, or she looks over, and there's some history, something going on. And then of course we know for sure when Han says, "I gotta leave, I got a bounty on my head," and he needs to figure it out. Then he goes up to Leia after, and he's like, "Okay, well, see you later." And she, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So just the look, that opening scene, the look, right, tells a giant story without having to waste time on it. And I thought that another genius moment in this film.
Well, like you said, it built conflict, right? It's conflict, but again, it's that flirty kind of conflict. Like, in the beginning that Leia's interest in Han. Like it's there, right? It's just so well executed. it plays through the whole right up to the kiss, right? Like, let go of me. My hands are dirty. My hands are dirty too. What are you afraid of? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, it was so, again, he's just being a kind of his little, smug kind of self. At the same time, I'm a princess. I'm not falling for it. Oh, wait a second. I am falling for it, right? It was just so well done. And then, of course, the kiss, like you said, see-through interrupt, and she bashfully walks away. That was a mistake. She walks away. He's like, "No," right? Like, it was awesome. So good.
And you see her how we haven't really seen her yet like that now.
Yes.
Like she's always been, on top of it all, and and then she lets the defenses down, like for the first time.
Right.
There's hints of it happening already, as Stevie just pointed out, but that's when she really just kind of melts to Han Solo, and you're like, oh, okay. So again, and it's just this little scene, and again, so much you get so much from it. Empire Strikes Back.
Yeah. So then they make it to one of our next favorite. They make it to Bespin, right? That's the whole decision. And again, the story kind of changes a little bit, right? So it's like, they're in Bespin. There's Han's old buddy, and again, too, there's that subtle, right? He's an old friend, a scoundrel, and then when he gets down there, I think it's a well-written script of how people who hadn't seen each other in a while would meet, like when he says
with him.
I am here for repairs, and he says, hey, what have you done to my ship? He's like, hey, you lost her to me fair and square. Now the audience is like, what? That's so Lando used to own the Millennium Falcon, so he lost it in probably poker, right? And everything, and it's like, oh, Chewbacca, are you still hanging out with this loser? It's like such dude talk with each other, and it felt natural. It wasn't like robotic. I'm saying this. It was so natural. It
was a great meeting, and it's funny. Even though Lando is at once messing with them, as I got older, I realized he's messing with them to mess with them, but he's also showing them, dude, I got some power now.
Mm-hmm.
It was a little show of power. And after seeing Solo, the movie, it actually, to me, lends a little weight to this opening scene of them meeting, where Lando's like, look, buddy, I can have you land. I can have you sit there with no greeting for a little bit, make you sweat a little bit. He toyed with him a little bit, and I'm like, that actually plays into the new movie now.
Well, the thing is, like, he even said, like, in the room, I'm sure he's forgotten about that, right? Like, they built the tension, right? There's those little subtle words. Again, didn't need a whole dialogue, didn't need a flashback scene. Just those little words said so much. And just, again, how he's saying, it was, again, here you're introducing a new character, Lando. But the audience doesn't know who he is, but it didn't take long to get into him, right? You know what I'm saying? Like,
absolutely.
Again, really good job of showing who he was, like going through, like, and then, we can't trust him, though. He's my old friend, but you can't really trust him. Like, is there a problem with your droid? No, why? The droid's all
that was
pieces,
funny,
right? Like, it was so good, right? Like, I don't trust Lando. Okay, well, she says don't trust Lando. Okay, there's nothing wrong with the droid. He's fine. We like him like this, whatever, right? And then that whole sequence leading him to dinner, right? Like, how good is that scene? Right,
and another shocker as a kid, you're like, what?
I know. The door opened, and I just remember the first time watching, even watching it again. You watch it, like, I've watched it how many times? It's that door slides open, he stands up, Vader stands up, and the whole choo choo and pew pew pew. Like this is where one of those times Vader's first real time you see him as a badass, right? Like choo choo choo, just sucks the gun, have a seat, and then the whole end of the guy here before, like, you can tell, I'm sorry, but the guy here before you did, right?
He was very scary in this movie.
Yeah, absolutely, right. And Vader was very scary. Like how
this was Vader's movie.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you watch him on the Star Destroyers, right? Everybody's afraid when he walks by. Everybody's like,
everyone's always looking like,
don't kill me, don't kill me, don't kill me, don't kill me, right? Don't be mad, don't be mad, don't be mad. Like it was. Again, they did such a great job. Like, Vader the show was a bad guy in the first movie, but this one, again. Not that he wasn't, because the first one we talk about New Hope, he was always kind of raging, kind of angry, yelling, sort of thing.
Right, and this he was calm.
Calm, cool, in control, and
he was 100 times more powerful.
And everybody was afraid of him. Everybody was afraid of him.
Choked to death 2 people in this film.
Yep.
Well,
Did
he
and the second one was sarcastic too.
I thought he just promoted people. It's a form of promotion, right?
Congratulations.
Well, you have to get rid of the last person to do it. But
exactly.
But the sarcasm is the second one, right? Because the guy was going to abandon ship and tell him, give my apologies. And when he falls dead, he's like, apology accepted. Like
Captain
sarcastic little Sith he is.
Yeah, Piet went from like a private to an admiral in this movie.
Don't disappoint me, Admiral Piet. Right? Like, I better not. Like, it's so good. Like the ending when we just jumped to the ending, but even like the Millennium Falcon off in hyperspace, right? And you just see everybody going, "Oh crap!" And they're just like,
no.
Man.
That turn, like how he turns, looks like a little double take, then he walks. It was so good.
Let's talk about the final or the meeting between Luke and Vader. That was the first time we really seen, except for Vader and Ben, which was nothing compared to this. And of course, people are going to say, the criticism for Rey was, well, Luke fought Vader. No, Luke didn't fight. Or Luke was fighting Vader. Vader was
standing there.
Was just because he wasn't trying to kill him. He was trying to lead him, and he was just playing with him. People forget that.
Vader's one hand.
Yes.
One hand until the end when he got a little tagged on the side. Then it was 2 hands, right? Like it was one hand.
I got a little angry.
I'm toying with I'm toying with the kid, right? It's all you. Like he was in no danger. He was not afraid of anything. Like you're saying, Steve, he's trying to lure him into the trap, right?
The trap. Which and we kind of skipped this part, the whole to continue on with Luke and Leia's story, right? They're going to test out the carbon freeze on Han Solo and make sure it doesn't kill people. And that whole scene where it was sad. I remember probably being confused as a kid of what was going on, but that scene is so perfect where Leia says, "I love you," and Han says, "I know." Do you know what I do? I do that to my wife all the time. She'll say that. She'll go, "Love you," and I'll go, "I know." But when my oldest daughter was getting into Star Wars really hard, she would say that to my wife too, and make my wife so mad at me because she would say to my daughter, "Right, this is your kid." She goes, "Love you," and she'd go, "I know." And then my wife didn't catch on. We had to tell her. She's like, "No, I don't like that. Stop doing that." But we kept doing it. So whenever she would say that, but I would get in trouble. So that's a funny thing. So the whole "I know," and from behind the scenes, they had tried that where Han said, "I love you" back. And both Harrison Ford and Lucas were like this, or not Lucas, Kirshner were like, right, this isn't working. So basically, I think Harrison Ford winged that. He just said, "I know."
Yeah, it was improvised.
Brilliant. Because how weird would it have? Well, we would maybe never known, but it would have been such a different scene if he would have said, "I love you too."
No, it's so great. It's even how he says it too, right? It's just like, "I know," right? It's just so. It's so good, so powerful, so ingrained in the memory, right? Like it's an iconic line, like that no one forgets, right? Like it's again just timing is everything, right? Timing's everything. Just the feeling it gives, and just the whole lowering down, and Chewie's going, "Oh!" It's just time with the music. It's just so beautiful. Not it isn't beautiful, but just hits all the emotional heartstrings, right? And just boom, it comes up, then all that falls down. Boom, and Leia's just like it was just so the fear in her eyes, the concern, and Chewie's just crying, and it was just
like all of us when that happened. We were like, "What? Not Han Solo?"
I know, it was, but just well structured and well everything, and just which led to the whole entire confrontation of Luke and Vader in that same kind of chamber, right? And again, one of my favorite lines, we mentioned this an episode ago. One of my favorite lines from Star Wars is when he thinks he has Luke inside the carbon chamber, right? Lets it go, does this, it goes, and he jumps out, right? And he's like, "Impressive, most impressive," right? And cuts him, the smoke comes down, and it's just like I'm just thinking as someone who admires filmmaking, just how the smoke's around and coming up the tube, and then they're swinging the lightsabers in the smoke and they're glowing. It just looks so good. Sets the tone, sets the stage.
Yeah.
My favorite settings in all of it, those scenes, all of them, from the carbon freeze chamber where Luke turns around and there's the silhouette of Vader. The Force is with you, young Skywalker, but you are not a Jedi yet. And as you say, it's all misty, and the sabers. It's like, oh my God, here's the farm boy kid training to be a Jedi, meeting the Dark Lord of the universe in this city in the clouds. And it's like the whole thing, and the beginning of the battle, and then as that battle progresses, the setting, and then they end up out on the catwalk in the great shaft, and I'm like, it's so beautiful, it's so imaginative. I mean, it's just a perfect setting for this epic confrontation. It's just unmatched, man. It's just beautiful.
It was, I just remember as a kid watching it, thinking, "Wow, Luke is doing so great against Vader." And I think Vader started off doing that, kind of leading him into a trap and just kind of toying with him a little bit. But man, about halfway through to about the end, he seemed a little frustrated, because there was that scene where, well, first of all, when he starts throwing all the gear at Luke and Luke goes flying out the window, and then he catches. First of all, that could have killed him. I think he got a little frustrated. Then when Luke's hiding, and then Vader comes out of nowhere swinging at him.
Yeah.
Wow. He just turned it on, man.
Yeah, and then that's when it was game on, right? And Luke is just constant defend, going backwards, right? There was no. He was done fooling around with him.
It was great.
Oh, for sure. It was a good scene. And like I said, after he took that shot Vader in the arm, you could see it then. It's really cool, right? A guy in a suit, and you could tell he was like, okay.
The whole like, roar, right? And then from there, it was like, break the thing, cut down the thing, and the next was off the hand, right? It was
takes his hand off.
Yeah, just like, I'm sorry, you're done.
How horrifying, man. This was like, man, kids were a lot stronger, because, man, like all the choking and the death and the Luke's hand getting cut off, and we still turned out okay.
We did. We turned out.
It was awesome. And then, of course, who knew the big famous scene that was coming?
Oh,
who knew? Like, huge whole scene where, what does Vader say?
No, I am your father. Yeah, so like, it's just how, again, even how that's done, just the way the music comes in, right? The score, the pause, the close up, the fist, everything's, but the wind's going through, right? It's just like, it's such an iconic scene. Again, and how many times has that been parodied in other films, right? So, films or TV shows. That line's been used so many times, and everybody knows where it comes from. Doesn't matter if you're 10 years old, you know where that line's come from. It's probably one of the most iconic lines in the cinema history. Like, how can it not be?
Yep.
For those in the chat, I'll just say, let us know in the chat, those who are watching us live, what were your thoughts? What were you thinking when Vader first told Luke that he was his father?
Yeah, just how blown away. We're like, you know what? I remember, Steve, we had friends. I had a friend named Shane Jackson, Jim Jackson. Do you remember them?
I think so.
They had the comic book, so I knew before the movie came out.
Oh,
because they told me.
That's too bad.
Yeah,
spoilers.
So I was 7 years old, and I really I didn't mind as much, sort of thing. I still enjoyed the movie. I just wasn't surprised. I was like, oh, here it comes, right? So, but I'm not like all those other people the first time they heard it, not knowing, right? Like,
right.
Yeah, it's just like, but
I actually didn't. I didn't know. For as much as a Star Wars little nerd as I was, I didn't know. I found out the first time I saw it, and I remember being like whoa. But it kind of, I was like cool with it though too. I remember I was like, oh wow. I remember, well, like everyone, it made me like, oh, I gotta see how this all plays out. I'm like, then there was the great long winter, the 3 years till Return of the Jedi. But oh my god.
Oh man, yeah. Yeah, that was a big thing, and from that moment on, Luke decides not to join his father and jump into the big pit below, which is funny. Have you ever seen the Robot Chicken one?
Yes, I've
The
seen
different skits where he's telling him all the scenes, and Darth Vader's telling him about the history of this and that. But I also like the one where Luke's like, "Join you and rule the galaxy," and then he joins them, and it shows kind of like a scenario. Well, no, it shows Luke's imagination of what it could have been, but then he ends up falling accidentally into the pit. So it's kind of funny. But then things get really hectic, right? Because you got Lando and the gang minus Han trying to escape the Bespin City, and then Luke's kind of hanging underneath Bespin and stuff. It just got really, really chaotic, and again, the stormtroopers can't hit anything.
Yeah, they're pretty bad in the hallways of Bespin. Yeah.
But I like, considering there wasn't a lot of gunplay or blaster play in the ending like the other ones, I sure like it. Again, I watching again that scenario, that the whole from Chewie choking Lando to them trying to run out. I love that escape plan they have. Like they're running when it comes to R2 spraying the smoke, them shooting through, them running. Like the shots of like the stormtroopers getting shot and them exploding. I just love the way it looks. It's considering there wasn't a lot of gunplay, it was really, really satisfying to see them duking out with Stormtrooper. Chewbacca out with his crossbow, Stormtrooper blaster, and it just worked. I just really liked how it all came together, and it just built up nicely to the big escape until then that's when you see Leia's flying out and Luke's kind of Leia, and she's like Luke, and he's like turn around. It was just Lando's like, are you crazy? Like I just love like how they did that like 3 times in the movie. You notice that 3 times in the movie, it's the whole thing like they're always like. They all yell like where what do we mean turn around? Rah! They're yelling back at him like we're turning around no matter what. Like go in the asteroid foil.
They were abusing him.
It's always they're always contradicting sort of thing. They're like Han said, let's get closer. And they're going closer. Chewie's like rah! Like so. They did it 3 times in the movie. True. How they always. I just liked how it's a 3 beats, right? So in the last one, like turn around because. We're not turning around. It was, okay. We turn around. I just liked how that conversation worked and how they kept bringing it back in the movie, even in a crazy time about trying to escape. But you have to go back for Luke, right? Can't leave him behind.
Yeah, it's a great point, and it's like it shows if you have some really good tension between the characters, like that dramatic tension between everybody. And Lando was just another one in that mix because he had been involved in a betrayal. Now he's trying to deal with everybody with, as you say, all the craziness goes on. I really love those scenes too, actually. And they're just Empire, we were saying before, I just visually, it's a work of art. The whole movie is so beautifully done. And those scenes too, like the stormtroopers through the Bespin halls. And like you said, with R2, with the mist and the laser blasts going through that mist. There's just something so cool looking about it.
Yeah. Even like, go ahead. Sorry. Actually,
I was just gonna say I was just kind of rambling. I thought of something else too. I thought of this earlier that I didn't mention to you, Steve. A really interesting thing watching Empire again. I was telling Steve too how like since we've been doing these podcasts, even after seeing these movies 800 million times, something about knowing that we're going to talk about it. I'm seeing in a new light yet again a lot of this stuff. Something interesting with Empire Strikes Back. A couple things. Number one, it's beautiful. It's just a work of art. The whole thing. The settings are just absolutely beautiful, totally contrasting with The New Hope. Now, here's another interesting thing about it that I really noticed this time. Now, The Empire Strikes Back was like bigger and bolder and everything. Special effects guys, went off. This movie is at once extremely epic, but it's also extremely, extremely personal. And what's interesting is think of the characters and the people or aliens, whatever, on screen. This movie is almost 100% just the main characters. You get some rebels on Hoth, and you got the Empire, and you see a few people running around Bespin. But all told, for a movie of this scale and epicness, you don't actually see that many people in it.
No, you don't. I agree.
Right? You just get it's all the main characters, and you're just right with it. You're in the cockpit with them. You're on Dagobah with them. Even at Bespin, where there's a little bit of a crowd sometimes.
But most of the time it's really
but
contained.
For a movie of such scale and different worlds, it at once feels vast, but it's actually very, very intimate. The whole thing.
I noticed
even the battles.
I noticed that during the Han freezing Han scene, where I went, wow, there's only like 12 people on set for that. So it's a really, you got to think, for managing the scene and all the extras and stuff, like, it's a really controlled environment, but yet you don't feel like it's small.
Right, exactly.
Like you're saying that, you're right. It's very epic. Yeah, Hoth, you have all the people, all the troopers in the snow, and you have people running around. But other than that, it's just the main characters together in the little pods. It's not 3 characters. Well, usually it's maximum of 3 characters ever, right? You know, you have Luke and Yoda and R2, so there's 3 characters. On the Millennium Falcon, you have Leia, Han, you have Chewie, and C-3PO, so it's 4. But then even then, when they come to Bespin, same thing. They're all broken into little divisions, right?
Right.
It's really well done.
You got your guys kind of in the back. You got troopers, rebels, and Imperials. You've got your secondary distant characters, but all of the main dialogue and interplay. I mean, you'll have main characters saying a command to a rebel guy or vice versa, but you don't have dudes coming in from like all over the place. Which is another thing I think some modern movies make the mistake of if you're trying to develop characters, don't have too much coming from all the angles like that. And The Empire Strikes Back, and the whole original trilogy is almost like this. Like, there's a little more, maybe A New Hope and Return of the Jedi in spots, but it just you take the main characters and you put them in the stew. And you have them interact and develop with each other in these pressing situations, where some other movies, the plot, getting to point A to B to C to D to F, is like the main drive, the plot. The characters are the main drive of the story. Yeah, and you can still have all the action around it.
Yeah, agreed. Hey guys, sorry, I'm so sorry. I know it came late. I have to go and take my daughter to lacrosse practice now. I'm so sorry, but I have to cut out now.
No, dude,
thanks very much for letting me jump in here, guys. Really enjoy this, and I think Empire Strikes Back, again, after watching again, easily one of my top Star Wars movies. I'll have to rank them all after I finish watching them all, but just from the beautiful, like the Hoth, Bespin, just everything about it was so good. The character development, by far the best story. I think how limited it is, like we said, just really, really good. But thank you very much, guys. Yeah. Have a great week. I look forward to Return of the Jedi next week, right?
Return of the Jedi next week.
Absolutely, man. I'm glad you popped in, man. That was great.
Yeah. Nice to see you guys. Take care, guys.
All right.
Okay, man. Later.
See ya. All right. Well, we'll be kind of finishing up here. Before that, I just want to remind everyone that you can follow us on our social media, which includes Facebook, where all the old people like me go, Instagram, Twitter, and of course, please subscribe to us on YouTube and help us build our audience and make fun videos like this.
Absolutely.
So again, I think I said this to you before we went live. It's that scene at the end, right? When Boba Fett is taking Han away, Luke's got his hand back, and you have that music at the end, right? That kind of like, it's this kind of like empty feeling. And I'm kind of was thinking about it when you guys were talking. I'm sure I had this feeling when I was a kid, that same feeling in my stomach, that hollow feeling, right? Because everything seemed in disarray. Like, what happened? Did they lose? It's that same feeling I had watching Han Solo fall off that bridge in The Force Awakens. The same feeling. And, here we are.
I remember like thinking that I was sort of glad, because I was like, wow, now we're going to get some real battle. Or I remember just thinking that, well, all of this has to resolve. So I was excited that we were right in the thick of Star Wars.
Right.
And as perilous as the movie was, and as like as in bad shape everyone was, and the Empire had indeed struck back and all that. I just remember thinking, wow, we're getting, immediately everyone was like, what happens to Han Solo? It was like the biggie.
But did you think as a kid that he was dead? He was gone? Like that was it for Han Solo?
No, I didn't think he was dead. No, I thought just what it was. I thought he was taken away. They froze
But
him.
especially when you see Lando in his seat wearing his clothes, which is still a weird thing to me today. He was wearing Han's clothes.
But he was going after him, and like I didn't think he was dead. I had no conception of what was going to happen to him. I think I thought that maybe the Empire was going to get him or something. I don't remember. I don't know like what I thought was going to happen, but I didn't think he was dead. But I'll say this too, like as bleak sorta and like as a non-ending, like The Empire Strikes Back, was dramatically. When I just watched it again, though, I was a little more aware. Though there's one character that actually, if you look at his face and everything at the end, who's kind of like, okay, let's see what happens. Luke, for all the hell he just went through, when he got his hand and he was like trying out his hand,
right?
I'm like, okay, there was phase one of, all right, but they fixed him, so that's a good thing for Luke. Now he's got like a hand, and then he was kind of the expression on his face. He stood next to Leia, and he kind of had his eyebrows were kind of up like me right now, like, huh. And I was like, wow, Luke almost looks a little bit hopeful in a way. And I took it as he survived his confrontation with Vader. Right. He should have been dead. He should have been killed.
He should have been.
And he fell down either lightsabered in half, or he fell down the shaft and all that stuff. And he had the look of someone who was like, I got out of that. But if you look at his face, though, at the end of the movie, he's kind of like, he's got a little, almost not quite smile, but he doesn't look quite as desperately as like Leia does. And
you're right. He's trying to say like, look, it'll be fixed.
He was kind of like, better. All right, okay. Yeah. He kind of had like, okay, let's see. But he was a little more hopeful than I kind of remembered, like from, just from other viewings. I thought that was interesting. But again, that's just, maybe other people wouldn't agree with that. That's fine. That was just the impression that I had the last time I just saw
that does make sense. I'm thinking about it now. I'm gonna have to go watch it again. But yeah, he does
look at him at the very end, right when he gets his hand fixed, and then just that end scene. He's a little he looks a little bit hopeful to me, actually.
This is good. Well, it's come to that time. I think we'll end the stream here, but I'm looking forward to our next podcast, which we're going to be talking about Return of the Jedi, which is my favorite movie of all of them.
Yes, I'm a big Return of the Jedi fan.
I know. So yeah, I can bring down my Ewok buddy here.
Oh, the Ewoks, it's on.
So I'd like to thank everyone who was in the chat and listening, or maybe to the people that are watching this after the fact. Thanks for joining us. Be sure to follow us on our social media, like I said before, StarWarsReporter.com for all your news, and we have interviews, events, giveaways, etc. Check us out, StarWarsReporter.com. But
good to see you guys.
Thanks a lot, Jason. See you all next time.
Absolutely. No.